is there any hope of actually making this region better? Are we staying, is staying till 2014 going to make this better? Can we stabilize the area? Or is this just something that the politicians on both sides of the aisle don't have the guts at this point to say that this is not something we're going to be able to fix? To help us answer that question, we have a Wall Street Journal columnist and author of My Friend the Fanatic, Travels with the Radical Islamist, Sadnan Dume. He joins us. Thank you, Sadnan, so much.
Great to be here.
So you spoke once, I saw a speech you gave about the assassination of a Punjab governor, Salman Taseer, and how he was killed a little over a year ago by his bodyguard. And now for our viewers, why this was so significant is that at his funeral there were a few hundred people. He was killed because he spoke out against the blasphemy law in Pakistan, in which if you blaspheme the prophet, you can be killed, effectively. And there were tens of thousands of people who took to the street. As we're looking at, in support of his assassination, I should say, if we're looking at this area, stability, our hopes for making an Afghanistan, which of course is very much tied into these regions of Pakistan, that can stand on its own, I have to ask you, did we see a massive outcry on the streets, or are we seeing it as a result of this assassination attempt on Malala Yousafzai?
Well, actually, the response to the horrible attack on this schoolgirl has been much more encouraging than the attack on Punjab Governor Salman Taseer. In that case, as you correctly pointed out, the murderer was turned into a hero, and the person who was murdered for standing up for the rights of a poor Christian woman was turned into a villain. In this case, I think because the justice is so, it's so clear even to Islamists, even to many Islamists, that a 14-year-old girl whose only crime is wanting to go to school does not deserve a bullet in the head. So I think in this case, public opinion is definitely in her favor.
Now, do you think that the Afghan Taliban, the Pakistani Taliban, is it possible for the U.S. forces on this timeline they're talking about, given what you've identified, I know from your writing, as sort of a rise in extremism in the region, do you think that they actually can pacify this over the course of another year, or is this just a political timetable masquerading as the reality of events on the ground?
I don't think anyone thinks that they can actually pacify and cure this deep religious and ideological problem by 2014. However, what they can do is make enough of a dent in the fighting capabilities of the Taliban to create conditions for a peace that is more stable and that gives the people who are opposed to the Taliban and other radicals a greater shot at success. That's what we should be aiming for, rather than hoping to solve the problem on our own, which frankly is not very realistic.
And what do you say? You heard Paul Ryan say last night that the timeline of giving our enemies a timeline, saying we are going to be out by 2014, that just helps them hold back, pull back into their caves, wait it out, and come back out, when the Americans are gone. What do you say about that policy?
I thought Paul Ryan gave a very good answer, and I think, frankly, it was a brave answer, because what he said was not necessarily the most popular thing to say, but it was the wise thing to say. And in a nutshell, in that part of the world, not only do you have to be strong, but you have to look strong. And this is really where the Obama administration has dropped the ball by announcing their withdrawal deadline at the same time they announced the surge. They've kind of they created an incentive right then for the Taliban to, one, to believe that they were going to win, and secondly, to believe that they could wait this out. And I think what Paul Ryan is saying correctly is that you don't put your cards on the table, and you certainly don't show weakness to this kind of enemy.
Matt, I have to ask you, if we're not going to put our cards on the table, this acceptance of the 2014 timeline by both sides, to me, indicates that it's not ground-based conditions here. It's not what's happening on the ground. It's that they've just decided that now, we're in the 11th year, now maybe in the 12th year, we're finally going to pull our forces out in significant numbers. Maybe they'll leave some trainers behind. Why doesn't either side have the moxie at this point to say, these guys are out there fighting for us, they're on patrol, they're losing their lives, and we just don't know what the end state of the mission is here. Nobody really believes the Taliban is going to be completely defeated.
No. Yeah, I think the Romney campaign, in a large number of ways, tries not to stick its neck out too much. The squabbling of foreign policy last night was bizarre because their positions were essentially the same in many cases, including the 2014 deadline. It was a matter of this kind of vague sense of bluster, or whether you look strong, which is a pretty nebulous concept when you actually think about it. And meanwhile, we're talking about, Sudhan's talking about, we have to give locals a greater chance of success. Well, We've been talking about a greater chance of success for locally owned things now for 11 years. And how many people have been killed by what's it, almost 100 now of Afghan troops killing U.S. troops? You hate to bring the John Kerry line, but at some point you do have to ask who is going to be the last U.S. soldier to die for not even a mistake, but for a muddled policy right now, which no one really thinks, in my heart, I don't believe anyone really thinks that when we leave that there's going to be a moment in 2015 or 2020 when this is going to be a nice liberal democracy that won't have Islamic extremists.
Will, I mean,